The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented.
Hello and welcome to Health for a Lifetime. I'm your host, Don McIntosh. And today we're going to be talking about deadly plaques. This has something to do with heart disease. And talking with us today is Dr. Hans Diehl. He is from Loma Linda, California. He is a cardiovascular epidemiologist, and he is the founder and originator of the Coronary Health Improvement Project, the CHIP program. Welcome. We're glad you're with us today.
Glad to see you again, Don.
And the CHIP program, you know, I'm kind of emotionally attached to this program as well. Aside from hosting here, I've been a pastor in a local church in Wichita, Kansas for the last 13 years. We've actually done 16 programs now. 16 programs. And I just want to thank you for that program. It's turned the health around of my congregation and also about 1,000 people in my city.
I'm so glad that you embrace these concepts.
Now, today we're talking about deadly plaques. And what are you getting at here, deadly plaques?
Well, we want to talk about the #1 killer in our society today, which is heart disease. Responsible for every second death in our society. And yet people wonder, why am I getting it? Why is it hitting me? It's just like a bolt of lightning out of a blue sky. It really isn't. So we want to talk about heart disease and the underlying disease process, deadly plaques.
Okay. So where do these plaques come? What are we really talking about?
We're talking about the heart. For instance, as you look at this heart here, there's usually nothing wrong with the heart itself, but the coronary arteries. You see those arteries? These are the pipes that are being obstructed. They're narrowed down with a plaque buildup. And I want to show you some roll-in that will illustrate the kind of cause of heart disease, these deadly plaques. Let's take a look.
Okay.
Woke up, so to speak, when I was working on the anesthesia service, learning how to put people to sleep. And I was seeing my patients for the next day's surgery for coronary artery bypass surgery in order to bypass clogged arteries in their heart. Because it was late at night, I drew the man's blood test, and when I took the blood to the laboratory and had it processed, I couldn't believe my eyes. Now, normally, this liquid layer floating on top of the blood clot is quite transparent. It's a yellow, but quite clear. You can see right through it. The blood in this patient's tube, however, was anything but clear. The serum floating on his clot was thick and greasy white. It looked like glue. In fact, it stuck to the sides of the blood tube when I shook the tube. I went back to the patient. I said, "Mr. Phillips, did you eat before you came to the hospital tonight?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What did you have?" He said, "I had a cheeseburger and a milkshake." And when he said that, I realized that what I was looking at in his tube was all the fat in the beef burger, all the butter fat in the cheese, and the butter fat in the ice cream and in the milkshake. And all this fat had oozed out into his blood and actually turned his blood fatty. Well, 30, 40, 50 years of keeping your blood very fatty creates changes in the blood vessels that are very dangerous.
Over the years, arteries can become clogged with fatty material. Then a blood clot can form, blocking the blood flow completely. If the artery leads to the heart, the lack of oxygen can cause heart muscle to die. That's a heart attack. If the clogged artery leads to the brain, the patient has a stroke.
The next morning, we took Mr. Phillips to the operating room, and I put him to sleep, and the surgeon opened up his chest. And from these arteries, he began pulling out yellow, greasy deposits of fatty material called atherosclerosis.
Can just 30 days bring a drastic change for the better in your health?
That is incredible. You know, I remember the first time I saw that clip in the first CHIP program we did, and I couldn't believe it. And every single time I see it since that time, it still is quite shocking. All that stuff can build up, and he said that's the fat in the cheeseburger and all the different things that we're eating.
Yeah, every time I see it, it really brings home the message too, and that's what surgeons see every day who do bypass surgeries. These are the kind of things that cause obstruction and narrowing and hardening of the arteries, and that's of course what we call atherosclerosis, a hardening of the arteries.
So when does this start? I mean, you know, I don't have to worry about this till I'm what, 40, 50?
Yeah. Well, that's what we thought, but we know differently now. When it comes to Chinese peasants, they have to worry about that when they're about 80.
When they're 80?
Maybe 70.
So I need to move to China.
That's right.
So the Chinese, they don't struggle from this as much, but it is something we have. When does it start? When does this process start?
Well, this is basically a Western disease, and we find this today in young people by the time they're teenagers. For instance, when we have young people killed in car accidents, autopsies are being done. It's absolutely shocking. You see about 20% narrowing. Take a look at the next roll in here. You can see a graphic. By the time that you are 20 years of age, you already have 25% narrowing. By the time you're 45 years of age, you have more like 50% narrowing. By the time you're 70 years of age, there's hardly anything left.
Wow. So I'm right in between the 20 and the 45 there, so I'm kind of right in the middle. But that's a serious thing. So what does this lead to? What does this cause?
It's a very, very serious thing because this is the underlying disease process that leads to heart attacks, to angina pectoris affecting the heart. It can lead to the narrowing of the arteries to the ear, so you have hearing loss, visual loss, memory loss. It can lead to strokes, can lead to gangrene, impotence. These are all problems that are actually related to this underlying disease process called atherosclerosis. That's what you saw there.
So it's not something to take lightly. We have to really take it seriously.
Yeah, we do. We do. You know, these are these plaques, and they come in two different forms, as you see on the next one. On the left side, on the plaque, you begin to see a plaque that begins to increase to about 50, 60, 70, 80%. And by the time it's 80% narrowing the coronary diameter of the artery, that's when you develop the first sign oftentimes, which we call angina, chest pain.
Okay.
So this is a very common plaque that grows in American arteries. But there's another kind, and that's the next one here. And this one is not quite as extensive. You can see it's
a smaller
flatter.
one on the side there.
Yeah, that's right. You can see it on the left side there. It's smaller, but it's much more devastating because this is what we call a soft plaque. It's a vulnerable plaque. It's squishy, and it's filled with cholesterol on the inside, and that can much easier, what shall I say, break open. When it breaks open, on the right-hand side, you see this formation there of a blood clot. When that opens up, when that breaks, it's usually, quite often, fatal consequences. So that's responsible for 90% of all the heart attacks. So the second kind of a plaque that you saw, responsible for heart attacks. The first one for angina pectoris.
So the first one we saw filled up most of the artery, and that's the one where, when we looked at that other graphic, it wasn't the person at birth or 20 or 45, but it was when they were very old.
Correct.
And that's kind of more stable, and it's kind of calcified, it's kind of hard. But the other one, it's that the young ones, the little baby ones, that we have to worry about, and so it's probably more dangerous for someone younger.
Yeah, these are the vulnerable plaques. And oftentimes they don't even show up on our special x-rays, on angiograms. These are very vulnerable. Like you said, they're baby plaques, but they can break very easily. It depends on the amount of fat and cholesterol on the inside. That's why it's so important to bring the cholesterol level down in your bloodstream, because it also brings down the cholesterol inside the plaques.
So we hear a lot about this. I mean, it's on cereal boxes, it's on the news, all different types of things. But it seems like, especially in America, where I live, everyone knows about it, but they don't do too much about it.
Yeah, it's tragic. We could avoid these plaques. We could postpone them, to be sure. We can even reverse them. And but we haven't always known this. It took about 30 years to do this large Framingham study. And here you see there's over 1,000 research papers published. It took the government about $43 million. And what they really found is that this disease doesn't just strike blindly, but there are certain risk factors. There are factors, characteristics that we have that place us at a higher risk for this disease.
So what are some of those risk factors and how did they discover them?
Well, they observed a whole town near Boston for 50 years, actually. And they began to count the deaths. They began to count the heart attacks. And then they tried to correlate this with certain characteristics. And here's what they found. Take a look. You see this risk arch.
Okay.
And you look at the red and orange colored risk factors.
Obesity, diabetes, okay.
That's right.
That's the red
smoking, the cholesterol, high blood pressure, triglycerides, inactive lifestyle, and stress. These are factors that we can change.
Okay.
But many of us don't. Now, if you go back to this arch, you will notice here, again, that the closer these factors are to the center, the more powerful they are in driving this disease.
Okay, so cholesterol is the big thing.
Cholesterol is the big thing, followed by smoking and triglycerides. So these are the big things. Now, if you go back one more time to the risk factors, you see something very, very interesting. In addition, most of these factors are under the control of our lips.
Our lifestyle, in other words, what we can do something
Yeah,
about.
take a look. Cholesterol is largely determined by what we eat. High blood pressure, largely determined by what we eat. Triglycerides, diabetes, obesity. Yeah, so our food supply is playing a major role in this kind of a disease, which is largely found in Western society only.
Okay, so this is probably your life work. I know it is because we've seen in the CHIP program that this is really what you focus on. Helping people understand this risk arch and then recognizing that they have some responsibility.
Yeah, actually, opportunity, don't they? But you know, when you look at the next graphic, you see on the left-hand side, those people that have a high cholesterol, take a look, that are suffering from high blood pressure, they're smokers, they have diabetes, and they have a positive terminal test. These people in the red column, they have 140 times higher risk on the next one as the one in the green column. I mean, you can determine your chance of a heart attack in this extreme illustration by 140 times higher likelihood by making some simple lifestyle changes.
So in other words, if you get your cholesterol down on the one side, it said it was 310, you get it down to 150 or below.
Right.
And that decreases your risk
Dramatically.
140%, you
Well,
said, or 100 times.
Well, if you add
All those
all
different-
these kind of things, you take the aggregate,
Okay.
140 times.
So your blood pressure, it's 160, you get it down to 120 or
Yeah.
whatever less. And this is what happens as you help people through education. They start seeing these changes.
Yes, we begin to realize that heart disease is not just a random act, but rather it's something that comes to us based on lifestyle habits that we adopt or accept or practice. For instance, when you look at the next graphic, you see that many of these risk factors are diet-related. Here you see a health column. This is a typical food column in a developing country. You notice there that most of the calories in this kind of a diet comes from starch. These are usually corn, beans, grains, simple foods. You have some protein, and you have some fat, and you have some sugar.
Well, no, this is good. This is good then.
This is very good.
So this is what they would eat like in China and in these countries where you don't see heart disease.
That's correct. So this is the more ideal diet, a simpler diet.
Okay, now we're talking with Dr. Hans Deal. When we come back, we'll look at what's bad. You've seen what's good, we'll see what's bad, and hopefully you'll make the right choice so you don't have to have these deadly plaques. Join us when we come back.
Are you confused about the endless stream of new and often contradictory health information? With companies trying to sell new drugs and special interest groups paying for studies that spin the facts, where can you find a common sense approach to health? One way is to ask for your free copy of Dr. Arnott's 24 Realistic Ways to Improve Your Health. Dr. Timothy Arnott and the Lifestyle Center of America produced this helpful booklet of 24 short, practical health tips based on scientific research and the Bible that will help you live longer, happier, and healthier. For example, did you know that women who drink more water lower the risk of a heart attack? Or that 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night can minimize your risk of ever developing diabetes? Find out how to lower your blood pressure and much more. If you're looking for help, not hype, then this booklet's for you. Just log on to 3abn.org and click on free offers or call us during regular business hours. You'll be glad you did.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Hans Diehl from Loma Linda, California. He is a cardiovascular epidemiologist, which is a big way of saying that he deals with the heart and studying, looking at the studies and the research to help people, first of all, understand heart disease and hopefully avoid it. I might say something else to our listeners as well. ChipHealth.com, isn't that right? That's
Yes.
your webpage. And you can learn more about what we're talking about today, about the CHIP program, about all of these different risk factors. You have a lot of, I've seen your webpage, you have a lot of different little clips that can be played, and people can really get an education just by going through that webpage. You spent a lot of time on that. We appreciate that. And we were talking about deadly plaques in our first half. We talked about the fact that, in America or the Western countries, people, it's not a matter of whether or not most of them have these plaques because they're eating this Western diet. But you've had good news for us. They don't necessarily have to succumb to the risk factors. There are some diets and there are some things they can do that can stop and perhaps even reverse these things.
Yeah, actually, it's true, Don. You can turn them on, and you can turn them off.
Mm-hmm.
So it all depends on the choices that we make. I want to maybe focus on the diet column once more.
Okay, go back to what we were
Remember, we
looking
talked about what is a good diet? A good diet is probably a diet that is high in
at. Starch there.
unrefined starchy foods, such as
Corn,
brown
rice,
beans, potatoes,
potatoes.
simple foods, right? Now, move to the next graphic, and you see the dramatic change over time as the income increases from
gross
the left
national
side,
product. Okay.
from the left side to the right side. You see, you are no longer eating the corn and the brown rice and the beans and the potatoes, but instead, on the right-hand side now, you're going to be eating.
More sugar, more fat, more vegetable fat, animal fat.
Well, let's stay on that graph for just a minute here. Take a look. From the left side, lots of potatoes. Now we eat Pringles. On the left side, lots of corn. Now we eat nachos. On the left side, lots of beans. Now we eat sirloin steaks. See, with affluent comes a change in our diet. We are now engineering our food. We're now eating more animal products. We're no longer eating a diet that's high in starch, but now it's high in fat and sugar. And whenever you have this kind of a diet, within 10 years, you'll find in that society that is adopting this kind of a affluent dietary pattern, especially when you smoke and you don't exercise, you will see within 10 years heart disease.
So are you concerned about what they call globalization, about everybody kind of eating the same thing or hearing about the same things because of the media?
There was a time when heart disease was largely restricted to 10% of the world's population. That was 50 years ago. Now it's probably at 45% of the world's population. We see a globalization of the Western diet. Everybody wants to eat like an American. But people don't realize they also die like Americans. I mean, we didn't have heart disease 100 years ago. This is a new disease. It has to do with not genetics so much as it has to do with our culture and what we're driven to do, the choices we make and how we eat and live and die.
So you said something interesting. 100 years ago, this wasn't anywhere except for 10%. How do you know that?
100 years ago, you couldn't find it in North America. They've done autopsy studies. They're recorded. It was difficult to find this atherosclerotic plaque in the arteries. 1950, 1960, you just began to see it everywhere. After World War II, major epidemic. And today it has come down just a little bit, but it's still the number one killer in our society.
I mean, people back then, they ate these foods that were not good for them. What's the difference? The exercise?
You mean 100 years ago?
Yeah, 100 years ago.
Oh, no. People used to have some meat. They had some of these specialty cakes, perhaps 100 years ago, but it was a minority item. I mean, you had a big steak, probably on Sunday coming out of church. Today, every day is a Sunday in our society. We didn't have those candy bars. We didn't have those refined foods. We didn't have potatoes coming in little chips. We didn't have crinkly bags. This is a new invention. And this has increased the intake of fat and sugar and salt to the extent that it's now contributing to these modern diseases.
Okay, so this American diet, the Western diet, is toxic.
Well, yeah, it's a strong word, but you're right.
Okay, so what do you do to address these deadly plaques?
Well, what we try to do through education, help people to move towards a simpler diet, more foods as grown. Maybe we ought to get back to eating more potatoes, more corn, more beans, more fruits and vegetables. Maybe less of these snacky items, right? Maybe less of these crinkly bags items. Maybe we ought to cut back on cholesterol foods, the animal products, and maybe use them occasionally rather than every day.
Now, in the CHIP program, how do you go about doing this?
Oh.
I mean, I kind of know, but I want our viewers to hear, because this is a powerful, you know, it's actually, I don't know, you can probably update me, but there's 5 or 6 scientific studies now done on the CHIP program itself that are showing that it's effective. So what exactly is happening?
Well, we talked about these risk factors, didn't we? We talked about this risk arch. And so the CHIP program tries to help people through a 40-hour educational program to begin to make some simple lifestyle changes so that the cholesterol drops on the average 15%. So when you drop your cholesterol 15%, you drop your risk of a heart attack in half right there. We help people to begin to eat more food of the right kind, and the weight comes down 6 to 10 pounds in 4 weeks without even trying. We help people to recognize that maybe we should cut back on our salt consumption. And what you begin to see is the blood pressures come down. We get people into an exercise program, and all of a sudden they begin to feel muscles they haven't felt in years. They begin to become more energetic. They feel we can do this. And some people that are still smokers, you know, we try to help them to stop smoking. And also do something about the diabetes by increasing more of the fiber in the food intake.
Now, when you say we help them, is it through education primarily, or through example?
Yeah, we have groups of 30 people. We have groups of 500 people that meet every night, Monday through Thursday, by and large, for 4 weeks. And they learn the concept step by step, looking at all the scientific studies that we have out there. They're all filling up libraries, but how do you really make it available to people, and to translate this in such a way that people can really take it in, and then through shopping tours and food demonstrations and walking exercises, get them inspired. And as you know, as time rolls on, after 2 or 3 weeks, the people are popping up in the audience. My doctor had to reduce my insulin. My doctor had to reduce my blood pressure medication. I lost 6 pounds by now. I'm feeling great. And so it begins to spread. And so as they come into the alumni program after the program is finished, there we have an opportunity to sustain these lifestyle changes.
So it's through education. I guess the big word for it, if you were a psychologist or if you were, you know, someone that is dealing with mental health, would be cognitive behavioral therapy.
Sounds like a pretty big word, but it's sort of you understand. It's a rational approach to making some simple lifestyle changes based on evidence, not because of some emotion or because you heard somebody talk about it on a talk show. No, this is based on epidemiology, the study of epidemics.
So that gets their attention. They say, okay, it's not just me, it's not just my wife saying to me, you shouldn't eat that, but there were thousands of people that ate this, and this is what happened to them. I don't want that to happen to me. And they get their cognitions, their thoughts are changed. And they say, boy, if my thoughts change, then my behavior will change, and I won't have this angina anymore, or I won't have what he says I will have.
Yeah. You see, we take them through many of these large studies. For instance, you can go to Japan, 1950, Japan. Difficult to find heart disease in Japanese. As a matter of fact, the Japanese medical school in Tokyo imported coronary arteries from Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. They said, we need to have some of these plaques. We need to have some of these specimens so that we can show our medical students what kills every second American.
Because they didn't have any of that.
They didn't have any.
Okay.
Can you imagine? But you know, all of this has changed. Today, Japan has become westernized. Today, Japan enjoys.
They don't have to import these anymore.
It's gone.
So, well, this is exciting, actually, where you have, what is it, 40, 50, 60,000 people that have now gone through the CHIP program, and they all see these same results. But you're a Christian clinician as well. How does the power of God factor into this?
Well, I think we recognize that God is the creator, and He gave us a circulatory system of some 60,000 miles per body. I mean, you think about this. I mean, we are wonderfully and fearfully made, and as we recognize God is the owner of our bodies, we can now respond to that a gift entrusted to us and say, what can I do to return this gift to you? How can I maintain, you know, the beauty of this organism? And so faith then comes in to empower us to do that which is not easy to do.
So this group activity helps us, but really the power of God must be available to us personally to make these kind of lifestyle changes.
If you can rely on God who empowers you, you can swim against the current.
Let's go back and look one more. There's a graphic back there. See if you can find that of that optimal diet way back. Well, this graphic's good too. The diet of the American people is rich in meat, other sources of saturated fat, cholesterol, and this diet, which affluent people generally consume everywhere, is sets the patterns for high rates of heart disease, certain types of cancer, diabetes, obesity, hypertension, and major killers. This is the killer diet, and that's what we want to avoid. Instead, getting back to the diet, the original diet that God had planned for us: fruits, nuts, grains, and vegetables.
Simple foods, foods as grown, simply prepared.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. The people that are watching can go to chiphealth.com, right?
That's
Learn
correct.
more about the CHIP program. It's an exciting program. It's changed my life and the life of others and many others across the country. We hope that as a result of this program, you'll have health that lasts for a lifetime.